Hey, what's up, everybody? Warm welcome to day 3 of List Building School. And today I'm really excited to be bringing you Jeff Goins of GoinsWriter.com. And he has a killer presentation for you guys today. He's built quite a massive audience, and that's really what we're going to dive into, kind of like an audience building masterclass. How he built an audience from 0 to over 100,000 email subscribers in 18 months. He escaped the 9 to 5, and he turned this into what I think is now a 7-figure business. Jeff, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think
that's right.
Yeah, that's correct, right? So you built it very quickly up there, and now you just keep growing to have a bigger team. And you're gonna kind of dive in there step by step how you did it. And we see a lot of people tuning in live here as well, so it's quite interesting. We have Will is here, Megan, we have Trisha, we have Garden here in the chat. And so, yeah, we're going to also take some Q&A at the end. So you can ask Jeff your burning questions. So that's pretty cool. We're going to leave plenty of time for that. But with that being said, Jeff, warm welcome to List Building School.
Thanks for having me, Navid. Good to be with you. And it looks like we've got Buddha in the background.
Yeah, it's my living room. Yep.
Yeah. And I see JJ from Hawaii is here. So I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we have a ton of people tuning in. So if you're not in the chat right now, feel free to log in. That's how we can take questions. If you're in we have like a Facebook comments below too on the live page, but go in the chat because that's how it refreshes automatically, so we can actually see you. Can see if you're tuning in here, and we have hundreds of people tuning in, so that's great. So we're gonna dive into Jeff's presentation in just a moment. We're just getting some more people on here first. All right, this seems to be pretty much a full house coming in, and even more can watch the replay. We have you in here in the chat coming in the Facebook comments too. Awesome. Jeff, why don't we kind of dive in a little bit to your presentation, then we'll get more people in here as well as we go.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, I'll go ahead and share my screen. By the way, thanks for having me. Good to be here. Good to see everybody. I'm going to do this, show my entire screen, and it's going to look kind of Inception-y for a second. And all right, good. So you should be seeing that main slide now, which is how to get 10,000 fans, quit your job, and make $100,000 in 18 months.
Yes, let us know in the chat here if you can see it, and also if it's a little bit blurry for you, make sure you actually turn up. There's a little wheel on the YouTube players. Turn this up to 720p, and then you get HD resolution. It should look really crisp.
I'm gonna do a little bit of Q&A at the end. Is that right?
Yep, totally.
Great. Okay, let's roll. So welcome everybody. My name is Jeff Goins. If you don't know me, then you're like most people in the world. I don't like how some people go, if you've never heard of me. Well, there's a lot of people out there, and it's a great big internet, and so that's okay. So if we haven't met before, online or in person, I am the best-selling author of 4, soon to be 5 books, including the national bestseller, The Art of Work. I run a blog, as Navid said, GoinsWriter.com. And I teach an online course for writers and creatives called Tribe Writers, just teaching people how to build an online audience through their writing and then make a living through that. And I host the annual Tribe Conference, which we just finished having last weekend, which is a lot of fun, and I'm still recovering and catching up from that. So glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Navid. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm going to be quick, and I'm going to share some stuff that maybe might be a little bit counterintuitive to some of the things that you've learned so far. By the way, if you just want to connect after this, shoot me a tweet. If there's any questions that I don't get to answer because I've got to run pretty quickly after this, send me a tweet. If I say anything particularly funny, if my voice cracks, feel free to use that Twitter account to make fun of me. And you can find me at my blog at goinswriter.com. And if you stick around to the end, I've just got a little free gift for you that is basically a PDF version of all the stuff I'm going to share with you today. Okay, so in a nutshell, here's kind of my story. Here's how I got started. Over the course of just a couple of years, I went from being a nobody blogger to becoming a published author, and then eventually a full-time writer and an entrepreneur. And really, this began with a dream. For years, I just sat on my couch dreaming of becoming a professional blogger, becoming a writer, sharing my words with an audience who wanted to hear what I had to say. And I was frustrated. I was really struggling with this sense that I felt like I had something to say, and yet there was nobody out there who cared what I was saying. And at the same time, I felt like there were people who were succeeding at this and just like didn't have, like they weren't saying anything. So it really frustrated me. And maybe you feel this way too. You see people succeeding with blogging, podcasting, online business, and they've got hundreds of thousands or millions of fans. They've got these big businesses, and you just don't get it. And that was really frustrating for me to see. And for the longest time, I just sat there. I was stuck in my frustration, and I didn't do anything about it. But then something changed. And within a year, I built an email list of over 10,000 people. Soon, over 50,000 people were visiting my blog on a regular basis. And in the next year, I made over $150,000 with my blog and writing, working 30 minutes a day. And as Navid said, I eventually, within 18 months, grew that audience to over 100,000 people, and grew it into a 6- and then 7-figure business. And the question that I get a lot is, how did you do it? And I'll be the first to tell you, this wasn't completely intentional. I don't believe that success is an accident, but at the same time, you can't plan every step of the journey. I certainly believe that. I'd be surprised if other people who have succeeded, when they're really honest, if they tell you anything different, because the truth is life is chaotic and unexpected things happen all the time. And so what I realized in looking back on this process, which is really a 2-year journey, I've been doing this for 5 years now, but those first 2 years were really crucial. And I don't think that this process necessarily takes 2 years, but you've probably heard, all kinds of different stories. So for some people, maybe it took 2 months. Other people, it took, 6 months or a year or 2 years. I'm not here to promise you that if you follow these 7 steps in 3 days, you're going to make $1 million, because the most successful, smartest people I know are tenacious. They persevere. And so I'm not here to sell you some quick and easy path to success. At the same time, I'm not going to say you just have to, rub your magic genie lamp and hope to get lucky and maybe it'll work for you. So how do you do it? My answer to that is this. If you do the work, you will see the results. It's a basic concept of sowing and reaping. If you're unfamiliar with that analogy, I grew up in Illinois, in the farmlands just outside of Chicago, and I was surrounded by people who lived their life by this principle. If they planted seeds in the ground and rain came and the sun shone, and if they did this every single day, something was going to grow. But if you sit and wait and watch for a crop to grow, to sprout leaves and grow out of the ground, you're going to be waiting a long time. And you might be frustrated, feeling like you're not making any progress. And this is how I felt with blogging. I'd start blogging, I'd get an idea, I'd start a blog, and I'd start writing, and a few weeks later, it didn't take off, and I'd quit. And I'd start another one, and a few weeks later, sometimes a few months later, I'd keep going, and then I'd quit. And then when I started my blog that I have today, goinswriter.com, I made this decision that I was going to do it every single day. I was going to work on something, whether it was writing a post, networking with somebody, emailing an influencer, working on a product, whatever piece of the puzzle I was working on, I was going to do something every single day for 2 years before I was going to quit. And if it wasn't successful within 2 years, then I'd move on to something else. And my definition of success was that I would get 250 email subscribers. That was my definition of success. I was just trying to reach people with a message that I felt like they needed to hear. And if I could make a little bit of money off of that, that would be cool too. So I started with this tenacious belief that I was going to do the work, and I was going to trust the process and not expect immediate results. But what I promise you is this: if you do the work, if you follow the things that I'm sharing here, that Navid has shared, that other speakers have shared as a part of this experience, you are going to see results. Now, I think depending on who you are and what your niche is and what your message is, the results can vary a little bit. But I've never met somebody who follows this process that I'm going to share with you who has had 0 positive results. It just doesn't happen, because these are proven tactics and techniques, things that I learned from other people that I've applied in my own journey. So if you do the work, you see the results. So at this point, maybe you're thinking, well, yeah, but ... whatever the excuses are. And I typically hear one of, if not all 3 of the following excuses. The first is this: that would never work for me. Have you ever thought that? You heard somebody succeed and you go, well, of course, that's Tim Ferriss. Of course it worked for him. He's good looking. He can't grow that much hair, whatever it might be. That would never work for me. I said this for years, and it kept me stuck. The second thing that you might be saying is, I don't have enough time. This is a very popular one. I hear it a lot. And that was true for me as well. I felt like I didn't have enough time. My wife was pregnant. We were getting ready to start a family. Obviously, I was married. I was working a full-time job. I had friends and family who wanted to see me. And so this idea of starting a blog and basically turning it into a business, I mean, who has time for that? And so that's a very common reason for, getting stuck in this process. And then the third and final one that is often subconscious is, I'm not that good. I'm not that good of a writer. I'm not that eloquent. Maybe English isn't my first language. What skills do I have to offer the world? And, on and on and on. But the third reason that people get stuck in this process is that I'm not that good. So all this sounds great, but I don't have enough time. That would never work for me. And maybe I'm just not that good. So my question for you, if you're feeling that way, is this: what exactly are you looking for? Why are you here right now? Because I believe that people, whatever they're looking for, they're going to find it. And typically you're looking for one of two things. You're either looking for an excuse, you're looking for a reason for somebody to say, and then I got lucky, and then I won the lottery, and then I went to this conference and randomly somebody appeared and made all my dreams come true. And you go, oh, okay, like now I have the excuse, now I have the reason to not try because I realize that I'm not that good, or I don't have enough time, or that could never work for me. But if you're looking for an excuse, I believe that you're going to find one. The other thing that you could be looking for is a way to succeed. And again, I believe that whatever you're looking for, you're going to find. So even here today in this presentation, as a part of this event, I think it's good to kind of check our motives at the door and ask ourselves, what are we looking for? Are we looking for an excuse, or are we looking for a way? Because if you're looking for an excuse, you're going to find one. Remember, whatever you're looking for, you're going to find it. And if you're looking for a way to succeed, you're going to find that too. So I'd like you to, in the chat, give me permission to challenge you a little bit. Can I challenge you? Just write in the chat, yes. And if the answer is no, you don't have to write no. Like you should just kind of check out. And I don't mean to be mean about this, but if you're not willing to let me challenge some of your assumptions, if you're not willing to press in and grow and try some things that maybe you've never tried before, or maybe try some things that you thought you tried before, but they weren't successful, and maybe I can help guide that effort a little bit during this presentation. But I'm asking, are you willing to choose into this experience, press in a little bit, and try this out? Yes or no? I'll just let you do that. Okay, good. So we've got some people who are in. And if you're not in, now's a good time to go eat some lunch or something and come back for the next speaker. No big deal. That doesn't offend me. But I know that I can't help you get unstuck in growing a list, monetizing your platform, building a large audience, if you're not willing to do the work, if you're not willing to try some things you've never tried before, and willing to think some ways that you've never thought before. Okay, so are we good? Can we move in? Just let me know in the chat, I'm in. If you're in, if I can challenge you a little bit, I will share with you these 3 things that I think are instrumental. They're instrumental for me, and I've seen them work for thousands of people over the years, and they're working even today. So this isn't like 15-year-old internet marketing advice. I see these things work day in and day out, and I think they'll work for you too, and I'm excited to share them with you. Are you in? Say, I'm in. Great. Okay, let's jump in. Okay, so there are 3 keys, I think, to building a powerful online audience. And so far, you've probably heard about lead magnets and all kinds of things, all kinds of tactics, strategies, and I think those things are great. But I'm a writer, and I've got some marketing chops, and I've learned some things about marketing. But at my core, I am a content creator. And what I'd like us to talk about, where I'd like us to start here today, is not just giving you another tactic about how to get in front of more people. Because what is the thing that you need when you get 100,000 people show up on your doorstep tomorrow, or in 6 months, or 2 years, or whenever it happens? Because I believe that if you do the work, you're going to see the results. What happens then? I think this is something that we don't talk enough about when, we're kind of in our little internet marketing circles. I believe that what really makes a powerful platform is that you actually have something to say. I believe that what makes a powerful platform is you actually have something to say. And this is the most overlooked thing in online marketing today, as you learn this tactic and this strategy and this thing. And nobody's asking the question, is what you have to say worth saying? Now, I believe that everybody has a story to tell. Everybody has an idea or something helpful to share with the world, a gift to give, but often unlocking that, figuring that out is a little bit of a challenge, and I believe we have to start there. So there are 3 keys I want to share with you today. The first key is this. Before you start list building, you have to establish your platform. So what exactly is a platform? Maybe you've heard this before. This is particularly popular amongst writers, creatives, and when I talk about platform, I'm not necessarily talking about the technology, whether you're using, WordPress or Wix or, whatever. I'm talking about the influence that you have with an audience. When somebody stands up on a stage, and this is just fresh in my mind because I was hosting our tribe conference this weekend, and when somebody came to the stage, there were hundreds of people in the audience and they all quieted down and looked at this person and listened. That's what a platform does. When somebody takes the stage, when you step into your platform, people pay attention. So I believe that whether you realize it or not, you already have a platform. This is the good news. You already have influence. You just need to leverage it. And so something that I hear a lot from folks is, can I build a platform doing whatever it is I do? Or do I have to go play somebody else's game, right? Do I have to worry about lead magnets and listicles and this and that? Or can I just share my message? Can I, help, moms become better moms? Can I help knitters become better knitters? Can I share my poetry or fiction or photography with the world and people will actually pay attention? Or do I have to turn into a sleazy, slimy marketer? Sleamy, hashtag Sleamy. That's a fun new word. Can I build a platform doing what I do, or I have to play somebody else's game? Here's the good news. Yes, you can. I feel a little bit like Barack Obama. Yes, you can. You can do this. But you need to understand that there is a game being played here. You need to understand how the game is played, what the rules are. And I don't mean this in any sort of trivial way. Just like in a game, there are rules. And if you play by the rules, you tend to win, or you set yourself up for winning. And if you break the rules, you tend to lose. So you need to understand what the rules are when it comes to getting attention online and how your platform fits into that. So what does that mean? Well, I believe that there are 5 basic types of platforms. So maybe you've heard somebody say, if you need to build an online audience, all you have to do is like find a niche and, write targeted articles or videos or podcasts, create content for that audience, and then it'll work. You'll just help those people, then they'll pay you money. I think that this is overlooking a really important concept, which is that everybody's voice is a little bit different. Everybody has something to say, and they're going to say it a little bit differently. Everybody has different strengths and weaknesses. And the good news that we don't hear enough is that there is more than one way to earn attention online. At the same time, there's not a million ways. I think there are 5 basic ways that most blogs, podcasts, and like video blogs, YouTube people, social media personalities, anybody who has a platform, attract attention to their audience. And this becomes very, very important when you're thinking about list building, because what is attracting people to your list in the first place? You can have all the best, most optimized lead magnets driven by Facebook ads going into funnels in the world. If you don't know what your platform is, if you don't know what you have to say and to whom and how you're going to say it, these people will not stick around. The next time you send them an email, and if you haven't done a good job representing your brand and exactly who you are and what you have to say, they're going to delete it, they're going to unsubscribe, or they're going to go, who is this person? I don't even remember signing up for this. I'm going to send them to spam. So you have to figure out what you're going to say and exactly how you're going to say it and how this fits into your area of expertise and influence. So there's 5 types of platforms. I want to share them with you. These are the different these are the things that really kind of set me free and made me realize, oh, I don't have to do it that way or that way. I could do it my way. And yet there's a proven path that I can follow in other people's footsteps. And I learned this just by observing, studying bloggers, best-selling authors, podcasters, online entrepreneurs, lots of different people in lots of different niches and industries who were doing it and trying to figure out what they were doing and exactly how I could replicate that in a way that aligned with my own passions and skills and gift set. Okay, so 5 types of platforms. Let's jump in. The first, what I call platform personality, is this. It's the journalist. Now, the journalist builds his platform by asking questions. So if you have a podcast and you interview other people, this is the journalist platform. You aren't necessarily an expert yourself, but you're leveraging other people's expertise to bring attention to your audience. And over time, people start to associate you with those other experts. A great example of that is Oprah. Oprah was just this, smart woman who had really good questions, but she wasn't a celebrity herself yet. And yet she did this for decades. And now she is as big a celebrity, and in some cases bigger than all those people over the years that she interviewed. So you build your platform by asking questions. And the only requisite for this is you have to be curious. You have to have a little bit of curiosity. Another example is Malcolm Gladwell. Gladwell is a best-selling nonfiction author, business, personal development kind of author. He is one of the most successful authors alive today. And yet, he's not really an expert in the things that he writes about. What he is insatiably curious about these topics of what does it mean to succeed? How does your brain work? What does success look like? And he asks really important questions, and then he goes and he gets the answers, and he brings them back to you in the form of a story. And over time, people start to attribute him to the ideas that he's sharing, like the 10,000 hour rule, for example, which is not Malcolm's idea. It's an idea that he borrowed from a guy named K. Anders Ericsson, and he gave it a name, and yet he is now associated with these other experts that he's interviewed. So that is the journalist platform personality. The second is the prophet. The prophet builds her platform by telling the dirty, ugly, nasty truth. I mean, this is what prophets do. They tell the truth even when people don't want to hear it. And the only requisite that you need to have for being a prophet is to have a little bit of dissatisfaction with the status quo. You got to be mad. You have to have a fight to pick with the world, with your industry. You're going to stand up and say something that might be hard for other people to hear. And yet, not everyone will like you, but those who follow you will be so hardcore about your message because you are finally speaking the truth in a world of liars. So you are saying the thing that nobody else has the guts to say. The best example that I can think of this is Seth Godin. Seth Godin is one of the most popular and prolific bloggers today. And what he has been doing for nearly 20 years on his blog every single day is he's been saying, this doesn't work. We can do better. For years, he was talking about marketing and then business. And now he can kind of talk about whatever he wants. Politics, education, it doesn't matter. The worldview of Seth Godin is this is broken, but we can fix it. That is the voice of a prophet. He's a little bit dissatisfied. There's hope to it. He's not angry necessarily, but he's going to say the things that people don't necessarily want to hear, but need to hear. Fun little side story. Seth once told me that when he wrote Permission Marketing years ago, which was just basically the idea that you can't spam people and make money off of it. Like you have to get people's permission. Like you guys, like you had to opt in to get these videos. We didn't just start buying lists and sending them to people. That idea, Seth popularized in a book called Permission Marketing. And when that book came out, I think it was like the Direct Marketers Association, some association, basically said, you can't do this. This is wrong. You can't, you can't do this. You're going to ruin our business. That's what being a prophet gets you. It will get you, it will endear you to your followers, but it will exclude you from your detractors. So it takes guts to be a prophet. If you're a people pleaser, you might not be a prophet, but if you just look around at the world and you see problems that need to be solved, you might be a prophet. Okay, the third personality is the artist. This is the person who builds her platform by creating art. Obviously, you just like making beautiful things. So photography, fiction, poetry, if you just kind of shoot like documentary films, you're not necessarily wanting to say something as much as you just want to express yourself, share a story, share an idea, but it's not necessarily educational, and there isn't a strong explicit call to action. This is that kind of platform. The only requisite for this is an eye for beauty. You have to be able to see things that other people just fail to notice. And if you have a friend who's like this, if you're like this, you're the kind of person who just sees the beauty in everyday life that the rest of us tend to miss. This is the eye of an artist. Whether you're a painter, photographer, writer, whatever it is, you tend to see things, notice things, and share them that the rest of us miss. And we love that. Your audience will love that. So if somebody told you at some point, like, you can't build an audience if you don't help people, if you don't teach something, if it isn't practical, if it doesn't have 7 easy steps, they're wrong. This is a very powerful way to build an online following. A great example of this is a woman named Ann Voskamp, who writes a spiritual blog called aholyexperience.com. aholyexperience.com. Her name is Ann Voskamp, and every day she gets on her blog and basically writes these prose poetry essays. Prose poetry is like very flowery, beautiful language, and it can be sort of extravagant. It's not clean and punchy and tight necessarily. It's poetic. I remember reading an essay on Anne's website one time where she was washing the dishes and she was describing a bubble, a bubble in the sink, and the beauty of this bubble. And she had hundreds of comments on that blog post. Don't anybody ever tell you that you can't build an audience making art. They're wrong. Now, what Anne understands is that she has an eye into a world that most people don't see. And so what she does really well and really beautifully is she speaks about the things that we all kind of feel but can't express. And so when she's describing that bubble, she's talking about the ordinary, everyday, mundaneness of life and how we can find hope and beauty even in, just kind of the boring everyday stuff that we all go through. And everybody can relate to that. And so the point of art, the point of being an artist is not to say, look at me, look what I made, but rather look at this. And here's how this helps us understand our lives a little bit better. Okay, so the fourth is the professor. This is the person who builds his platform on the facts. And these people tend to be obsessed with the facts, getting it right, information, data. They want to know how everything works. So if you think of like your typical like online teacher, person who is kind of like an online expert, probably often you think of the professor. And a lot of people, I think, feel pressure to do this, but it's just not in their nature to do this. It's not in my nature to do this. I'm kind of a prophet by nature, and I'm sort of a teacher second. And so most of my teaching is just saying, go do this, and here's some stuff that you haven't heard before that you need to try, instead of like breaking down, complex systems into easy to follow processes. The only requisite for this is a thirst for knowledge. Like if you hate reading, you don't like learning, you're probably not a professor, because what professors do is they connect people to information. They connect people to information. They don't necessarily have to create the information themselves, but they're the ones who are finding the information, curating it, and then teaching it to you so that you can then go do it yourself. And often they're simplifying it in the process. A great example of this is a guy named Jim Collins. Jim Collins is a best-selling author. He's a speaker. He's a teacher. And you'll notice we're not just talking about bloggers, because I think these ideas work across all kinds of different mediums and platforms. And Jim Collins does this really well. He was actually a professor, a business school professor, and started writing books on the side. He's a best-selling author of Good to Great, Great by Choice, How the Mighty Fall, all fantastic books. And what he does is he studies successful companies. He doesn't have a successful company himself. He studies them and he interviews famous CEOs or successful CEOs and kind of extrapolates their methods, studies all of the similarities and differences, and then says, here's what we can learn from these people who are frankly too busy to teach it themselves. And so what Jim does is he acts as sort of a buffer between the everyday business person and these very successful, busy CEOs who don't have time to say, here are my methods, here's how I did it. And that is what a professor does. They translate information from one source and then give it to an audience. Another example of this in the blogging world is my friend Michael Hyatt. He is great at this. He takes complex systems and problems and turns them into easy processes for his audience to follow, adapt, and apply to their own lives. And so you won't read a Michael Hyatt blog post that isn't actionable, because that's what he cares about. He is a voracious reader, a lifelong learner, and because he's filling up with knowledge all the time, he has wisdom and experience to impart for his audience. That's the professor. The fifth and final is what I call the star. This doesn't necessarily mean that you're a rock star, but it means that you have a personality that is attractive to people. When you look up at the sky at night, your eyes are drawn to what? Stars, unless you live in the city. That's drawn to, the lights of the tallest building, probably. So this is the star. The star builds his or her platform on their charisma. These people are particularly known for their likable personalities. And they're known for their likable personalities because they like people. So if you're a misanthrope, if you're somebody who hates people, you hate being around people, you don't like parties, you don't like conversations, this is not you. You want to be around people, and because you want to be around people, people want to be around you. And we can sense that even through a tweet, a Facebook share, a blog post. We understand when people like people and like community and want to bring folks together, and also when they don't. So the only requisite for this is you have to have a heart for people. You have to like being around people and want to help people and serve them. And you're just kind of a master of creating community wherever you are. You're a party looking for a place to happen. The best example that I can think of this is Tim Ferriss. Now, Tim is interesting because in some ways he kind of represents, different pieces of all of these platform personalities. He's a journalist because he can interview people, and he does that, for all of his books. And, with his podcast, he's constantly bringing on, new guests. He's a professor because look at all these books he's reading, and he's teaching things. So why do I say Tim is a great star? Because at the end of the day, the worldview of a star is this: if I did it, so can you. I'm going to be a human guinea pig. I'm going to try this, and I'm going to share with you the results. So, if you're watching, a YouTube sensation, a family blogger, some, comedy podcast, something that just doesn't feel like it's giving anything substantive, but millions of people watch this. Hello, reality TV. Hundreds of thousands of people subscribe and follow to these channels. What's going on here? Well, it's this idea that, oh, they're just like me. And that's the message of a star. So, whether you're teaching whatever, videography, or you're just documenting your family goings on, or, maybe you're eating your way through New York City, whatever it might be, if what you're documenting, what you're sharing has the message that if I did this, so can you, you are a star. And I know that feels a little bit weird sometimes. Hey, look at me, I'm a star. This isn't about being a celebrity. It's about connecting with people first based on your personality, and then winning them over, and then sharing with them whatever information you have to share with them. It's sort of the opposite of a professor. A professor leads with the information and then hopefully connects with the personality afterwards. And this is reversed. You win people over with your winsomeness. Anyway, so those are the 5 platform personalities. My challenge to you, and we've got to take away for each of these 3 keys, we've got 2 more. Don't build the platform you wish you had. Leverage the one you already do have. And so whether you feel like you're just getting started or you're halfway through, you're like, why are they talking about this? I just want to get 100,000 email subscribers. I would challenge you to look at your platform, look at the influence that you have or think you don't have, and ask yourself the question, what is it that I have that most people want? What is it that I have that 5 friends around me are asking for today? What is the thing that my family, or maybe your 87 email subscribers or whatever it is, what is it that they want from you? And are you leveraging that, or are you trying to be somebody else? Are you trying to play by somebody else's rules or master somebody else's game? I would encourage you to pick one of these 5 personalities, one of these different platform types, and optimize for that and that alone. So a question I get a lot is, can it be all 5? No, not very well anyway. Think of this like going to college or university. You have to pick something to study. You could study everything, but you're never going to graduate. So you have to pick a concentration. You have to major in something. And if you need to minor in something, you want a secondary kind of platform personality, I think that's fine. But start with your primary platform and then branch out from there. With me, what I realized is I was a writer and I was frustrated with the lack of opportunities and the lack of education for writers to make it today. It was either you got picked by a major publisher or you starved. And so I started my blog, goinswriter.com, to document the process of what does it take for a writer to succeed, and kind of railing against the injustices and frustrations, and also speaking to some of the, laziness and excuses of my audience. But it was this prophetic, kind of in your face voice that says, this is broken, but we can fix it. So don't build a platform that you wish you had, leverage the one that you already do have. That's takeaway number 1. All right, so let's move on to the second key, which is expand your reach. This is where we're going to talk about how do you actually grow a platform. So the first step is, of course, you need a website. You need to get set up with an email list. These are important tactics, but we're talking about the message, the voice, the intention and strategy behind those things. And so how do you expand your reach? How do you get your message out there? I was talking to a woman the other day who's a blogger. She's been blogging for 9 months, and she says, how do I get more traffic? I think I need like that thing where like you like people Google stuff and then your website shows up. I said, do you mean search engine optimization? She says, yeah, I need that. I said, okay, let's talk about that. And, I kind of gave her some tips. And then I said, well, how much traffic are you getting right now? She says, I get no traffic. I said, what do you mean you get no traffic? She says, my traffic is me. My traffic is me going to my website and reading the articles that I've posted or seeing if anybody commented and like refreshing a few times. That's the only traffic that I'm getting. She'd been blogging for 9 months and literally almost nobody had come to her website. What she was doing wrong was that she had built a platform. She thought she'd built a platform, but nobody was showing up to it. If you have a blog, if you have a website, an email list, a podcast, and virtually nobody, I mean less than 10 people a month, like nobody's listening to it, you do not have a platform. You have an empty stage. And if you had this in real life, you wouldn't just stand up on stage and keep talking to an empty room, would you? What would you do? You would go out, you'd leave the theater, you'd leave the venue, and you'd go find people on the street and say, hey, come in here. Come and listen to me. I've got music to play or art to share or a poem to read or a play to give or whatever it is. Come in and listen, please. And that's what we're going to talk about in this key. And this is something that a lot of people overlook. In order to bring people in here, you have to go out there. Okay, so I like thinking of the internet like a great big party, okay? Because I think when sometimes we get on the internet, we think in terms of like, funnels, lead magnets. We create all of these words, traffic, conversion, when really all we're talking about doing is connecting with people, a lot like a party. So how does this work? Well, I think that there are 3 strategies that you can leverage in finding people out there and bringing them in here. And if we think about the internet like a party, if you move to a new city and you get a new house or a flat or an apartment or something, and you want to meet people because you don't know anybody in this new city, the wrong thing to do would be to sit in your house and wait for people to come. Right? Because nobody's going to come because nobody knows that you exist. And yet this is exactly what we do with a blog, with a website. We go, nobody's coming. I'm saying cool stuff, but nobody's coming. That's because you're sitting in a room, in a house all by yourself. So what you would do is you'd throw a party probably. And you'd go around the neighborhood and you'd meet other people, maybe attend some other parties, and you'd invite them over. You'd tell them your address and say, hey, call or text or, email me, if you can make it and it's on this date at this time, come on over. You would treat it like a party. And the first strategy in treating the internet like a party is guest posting. It's being a guest on other people's platforms before you try to bring them back to yours. So what is guest posting? Well, I think technically speaking, it's free advertising for your blog. It is creating content and putting it on other websites. And I use this term liberally. So whether it's appearing on a summit like this, it's being a guest on somebody else's show, or it's creating content for somebody else's website, or syndicating content through, like for example, medium.com or LinkedIn, which are both free places that you can post content today. It's putting your content out there where people are already gathering and then linking back to your website. Even today, guest posting is a very important strategy for me to get in front of new audiences and bring them back to my platform. So how do you do that? Well, first you got to read the blog. You've got to study the material before you contribute to it. Then I think you need to form some kind of relationship with the author, even if it's just via email. And I think most relationships begin not with asking something of them initially, but offering to give something, or saying, hey, you're doing a great job. Keep up the great work. Hey, is there anything I can do to help you? Oh, by the way, I have a great article that I think would be really useful for your audience, and you've not written that yet. Would you be interested in publishing that? And so you form the relationship first, and then you can pitch them. Then you can say, hey, I've got something great for you. Would you take a look at it? No pressure. Let me know what you think. 9 out of 10 times this works, but it takes a little bit of intentionality to get to know the person and get to know the platform first. Okay, so that was the first tactic, guest posting. The second strategy in expanding your reach is email marketing. This is why we're here. This is why we've showed up. We want to build our lists. But before you can just build your list, you need traffic, and guest posting, appearing on other people's platforms, is a great way to bring people back to your audience. And that's very targeted traffic. So if I'm a blogger who blogs about blogging, and I get a guest post on ProBlogger, which is a blog for bloggers who want to make money blogging, and I write about 5 tips to monetize your platform, and at the end of that post I say, to get the next 5 tips in an ebook format, go here, and I send people to my website. The people who click that link, even if it's not hundreds of thousands or even thousands of people, maybe it's tens or even hundreds of people, the people who click that link are highly targeted people. They're going to opt in, and they're probably, if I give them the right offer, they're going to buy something from me eventually, or at least they're a very good lead for my platform. So email marketing, how does it work? Well, forget this thing that people tell you that email marketing is dead. It's not. It is the most important part of getting your message out there. I think of an email list as an essential part of any online business and serious platform. So if you haven't started email marketing today, you have to get on that train and start growing your list. Just to kind of give you a little bit of perspective, an email address is the most universal way that you can communicate with the most people online. It's the most universal way. So some people are on Facebook. A lot of people are on Facebook. Some people are on Twitter. I don't know if anybody's on Google Plus anymore. But everybody from the teenager to the senior citizen, I might meet on the street, has an email address. Maybe they don't check it every single day or every hour, as I sometimes do, but they have an email address and you can reach them. And so if you're trying to get permission to communicate with an audience, what should you ask for? What form of ID should you ask for to ensure that everybody has that same thing? I think it's an email address. So if you don't have an email list, you haven't really built a platform yet. You've just got an empty stage, and people are coming and going. You don't have any way of staying in touch with them. So how do you actually build one? This is what we've been talking about. This is sort of list building beginner steps, but it's an important reminder for those of us who may be hearing all these tactics, but not actually know, what are the steps that I should follow to do this? Well, I think the best thing to do is to start by giving away something for free. I'm going to do this at the very end of this presentation. So if you've liked this and you want to learn more, you can go to my website and opt in to get a free thing, and you can be on my email list. And at any time you can get off if it doesn't resonate with you. But I think most relationships should begin with a gift, not asking for something, but giving something. A lead magnet, whatever you want to call it. It's a reward for people giving you their attention. Okay, so that's how you build an email list. You get in front of people through guest posting. You offer them something for free. You bring them back to your website, and then you start building a relationship with them. We'll talk a little bit more about what to do with that email list in just a second. Okay, so the third and final strategy to expanding your reach is networking. So I really don't like this term, networking. It makes me feel uncomfortable. But when I talk about networking, I'm not talking about sort of the typical definition of the word. I think that networking is basically helping people by doing favors. Effective networking is reaching out to people and finding ways to help them with nothing expected in return. Doing things where you don't expect people to reciprocate. And this thing that my dad taught me growing up as a kid ends up being true, that what goes around comes around, that if you help enough people are going to help you. And you don't have to keep track of score. I've just seen this proven again and again and again. So when you meet somebody, I think that first you want to help them. Then if you've built trust with them, ask them to do something small that allows you to build trust over time. So often I meet people at conferences or over coffee, or I see people doing this where like you have one meeting and they ask you to do 15 things. Hey, now that I have your attention, can I guest post for you? Can you be my affiliate? Can you do this? Can you do that? Can you can you do all these different things? If you ask somebody to coffee or to a meal, or you're going to meet them at a conference, I think the best thing that you could do is say, hey, could I have 5 minutes of your time? And with those 5 minutes of their time, you've already asked for something, so don't ask to ask again. Hey, I just want to pick your brain, or can I have this favor? I think the best thing to do once you get their attention is to say, hey, thank you for X. Thank you for doing whatever, for your blog or your book or your podcast. It helped me do Y. It helped me become a better person, make some money, build an email list, whatever. Now, I was wondering if you had any bonus tips for me, like what can I do about Z, X, Y, Z, right? Thank you for X. It helped me do Y. Now, what about Z? And then Z is, what should I do next? People love hearing this because it says, hey, I'm doing something. You start with a compliment, like your stuff works. I can prove it because I just did it. Now I want to know what other piece of advice you have for me. This is what influential people want to hear. Because they want to influence people, they want to invest in people, they just want to waste their time. And if you say, I'm already doing stuff, can you give me something else to do? That is a powerful way to begin a relationship with people. And over time, it becomes very, very powerful and very, very influential. This, I think, is the best way to network, particularly with influencers. So when I got started, I was like, what could I do? Everybody says help people. I didn't feel like I had anything to offer. And then I kind of did a mental inventory, and I was a marketing director at a nonprofit. And I said, well, what can I do? Well, I can kind of tell stories. I've been a writer for a long time. So I know how to tell stories fairly well. And I could interview people. Why? Because anybody can interview people. Anybody can ask questions. And so what I did is I started asking influencers out to coffee, bloggers, authors, people who had something to share, particularly when they had an urgent need, like their book had just come out, their podcast had just launched, they're working on a project that they wanted people to find out about. And I realized that influencers are most generous with their time when they have something to promote. So get in front of them at that time and say, hey, can I interview you for my blog or my podcast or whatever? I'd love to share your message with my audience. You don't have to say I've only got 5 readers or 8 listeners or whatever. And I was surprised at how many people said yes to me, a no-name blogger, just by saying, hey, I want to interview you and share whatever you have, whatever you're working on, about your latest book, for example, with my audience. So I was interviewing people and then I was telling their stories. And over time, that earned trust with these influencers. And it also kind of legitimized my platform because I was starting to interview influential people, which goes back to that journalist platform that I mentioned earlier. So here's what it comes down to. People say it's not who you know, it's who knows you. I don't believe that. It's not who you know, it's who you help. And networking is about helping enough people that they start talking about you and your reputation starts to spread. And they go, oh yeah, I know her. She's so helpful. She's so nice. Never asks me for anything. And over time, you realize that people will be knocking on your door, wanting to help you because you're not a taker, you're a giver. Okay, so the takeaway is this. Don't build your audience from scratch. Build it off of existing relationships, off of other people's platforms, through guest posting, off of other people's influence, through networking, off of other people's connections, through the email list that you have, and you can continue to kind of grow and nurture that. And so that's the second key, which is expanding your reach. Okay, we're gonna move into a real quick third key and then open up for some questions. This is just worth saying because I don't think anybody like doesn't want to get paid. Maybe you're like me and you started this thinking, well, this isn't really about money. I just want to do this for fun, or I want to share this with people, but it'd sure be nice to pay my bills. And that was sort of my approach to this. And once you get to the point where you have a list of at least 1,000 subscribers, I think you're at the point where you can start thinking about monetizing. How does that actually work though? Well, I believe this, that if you have some idea that you want the world to hear, you no longer have the excuse that no one will let you. And getting paid is a very important part of this process of going pro, of becoming that authoritative voice that people want to hear from. And if you have something to say, I believe that people need to hear it, and there are people out there waiting to hear it and even waiting to pay for it. It's just a matter of you getting in front of them and kind of following the right steps to make that happen. Okay, so how do you do that? The first thing you need to do is you need to identify your expertise. This goes back to the platform thing. I love what Derek Sivers says about this. What's obvious to you is amazing to others. Identify something that's obvious to you that's amazing to other people. The second thing you want to do is ask your audience. Ask your audience. So you don't want to guess what people want when you try to monetize, when you try to sell. You want to actually ask them, survey them, email 5 friends, go walk around your neighborhood and ask people what is something that you do that's so great, that is so helpful to them, that you're just not even acknowledging. Get feedback before you go build something. And then lastly, and this is what we're saying, you have to give them what they want. You have to give them what they're asking for. And I love this from Amanda Palmer. She says that you don't have to make people pay you, but you do need to let them. I knew that it was time to monetize my blog when I had 10,000 email subscribers, which happened in the first year. And people were emailing me every day saying, can I buy something from you? So you've done your job when people are knocking on your door saying, here's money, now build me something. Now, why are we talking about all this? Because at the very beginning, I said, all the tactics in the world are not helpful if you don't know what you have to say, what your expertise is, understand how to leverage the influence that you already have, and then find ways to go out and intentionally help people in a way that is true to that message. So it really is important to ask yourself the question, what do I have to share with the world, and why is it important? When I published my first book, my wife gave me this card, and I was in the middle of this very long process. And for me, as a writer, publishing a book was the milestone. And I was a few months away from quitting my job. It was that year of making $150,000, and the previous year I'd made $30,000. So it was a huge transformation. And my wife gave me this card that said, it was never a question of if, but always a matter of when. And I believe that's true for you. As long as you're willing to do the work, I do believe that you'll see the results. I don't know if it's going to happen in 7 days or 7 months, but my encouragement to you is to not give up. And as you're getting all these different tactics and strategies to adopt and apply to your platform, your message, your website, please consider, what is it that you have to say? What is your platform? What are the relationships that you can use? How can you help people before you try to get something from them? How can you serve your audience by being generous before you ask for something in return? And then once you've done that, getting to the point where it's not about making people pay you, but letting them. Again, I think it's not a question of if, but a matter of when. As long as you're willing to do the work, I think you will see the results. So, big takeaway, trust the process. I do believe you're going to see results. If you have questions about that, remember, you can tweet me at Jeff Goins. We've got a few minutes of Q&A left. But just the next step, I mentioned that I had a free download for you guys. I love this quote by Seth Godin. Nobody's going to pick you. You're going to have to go and pick yourself. I think the next step in that process would be to just take one of these things and apply it to your journey. Take one step. A great next step would be to go download this free thing, goinswriter.com/audience, just a free ebook on everything I tactically did in those first 18 months to get 100,000 people in my audience. I would love for you to download that. That's my free gift to you. That's it. Navid, back to you.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I really resonate with some things you're sharing here. Like, definitely, like, doing the work is so important. Like, for me, it took 18 months for my business to take off, and I didn't give up until it finally kicked off. And it was actually interesting. It was with a summit it took off. But that's this kind of networking and expanding your reach and getting people. So whatever that's going to be for you, there's different ways to do that. For me, it was summits. For other people, it might be just regular guest posting or whatever. I know you did a lot of guest posting on other websites to kind of get yourself out there. I think, wasn't that how you kind of grew up to your first 10,000 email subscribers?
Yeah. So, I mean, the first 6 months were kind of a slog. I got 70 subscribers in the first 6 months. I mean, so it was really slow, really discouraging. And then at month 6, I said, well, I'll do this ebook thing. I'll give away a lead magnet. And I just took an article and I repurposed it. And I shared it with a few people that I had gotten to know who were more influential bloggers. And I said, hey, I just wrote this thing. It was called the Writer's Manifesto. It was 900 words. It was very short. But it was highly targeted for my audience, which was other writers. And I said, if you want to share it, cool, whatever. And in a week, that audience went from 70 email subscribers to 1,000. And that's how I got my first 1,000 subscribers in a week. Wow. And then from there, I started guest posting. And every time I guest posted, I'd get a few hundred subscribers. I think the most I ever got was like 1,200, which was, a big deal. That was Leo Babauta's blog years ago. But it was a numbers game. It was just, well, I'll get 200 here and 500 there and 100 here and 75 over there. And I did 100 guest posts in about 6 months. And yeah, that added up to about 10,000 subscribers.
That's awesome. And someone asked here in the chat before, what strategies do you use to actually get those guest posts, and where do you start? I think that's a pretty good question. So maybe we can break it down a little bit for them.
Yeah, of course. So read the blog. I would say read at least 5 blog posts. Get a feel for what they're talking about. Then email them. But the first email is just, hey, I love your stuff. Thanks for, such and such. Remember that XYZ formula. I think that's important. Thanks for X. It helped me do Y. Do you have any posts about, going to the next level or whatever? Then I think the second email, you can suggest some piece of content. Hey, do you have anything about such and such? And you've done your homework and know that they don't. And then you recommend that they write, an article about that you as an audience member would benefit from. So now you're sort of telling them, here's something that I would benefit from, and you're identifying that they're missing something in their sort of content archives. Then the next email, and these should be spaced out at least probably 5 to 7 days apart, you can offer. And if this is your first guest post, then you just kind of go in there a little bit blind and you say, hey, you know me because I've written in before or whatever. I noticed that you haven't written an article about such and such. I'm actually an expert on that. Here's my blog. Here's a link to my blog. Here's a link to anything I've done, interviews, other guest posts. I'd love for you to, I'd love to write an article for your website about that. And if they have guest posting guidelines, read those first. If not, just send them the idea and wait for feedback on it. And either they'll say yes, they'll say no, or they won't answer. And if they don't answer, I would follow up in another week, at which point, if they don't answer, I'd move on to the next one. But I'd pick 10 people. And I'd start with kind of, if you've never guest posted before, never written an article for another website, period, I'd start with, friends or people that aren't super influential. Get a few under your belt just so that you've got a list of articles to say, hey, I've guest posted here elsewhere. I've done a little bit of work. I have experience. And then, you can build on that. But most websites have guidelines, and really, like, most people kind of suck at this. So if you just don't suggest an article for them they've already published, or you don't suggest an article that is completely irrelevant to their audience, like, there's a good chance that they'll say yes, because guest posting helps you, but it also helps the host blogger, right? It's like me going to Navid and saying, hey, do you have anything about list building, particularly from a writer's perspective? And he might go yes or no. But if he goes no, then I go, well, cool. Like, I've done some of that. Can I write something for you? And he'd probably go, sure. And if I go, hey, I've done this to these other places, it just makes it kind of an easier yes. But it's not that hard to be good at guest posting. You just have to, like, not suck at like reaching out to people. Like, seriously, 9 out of 10 emails I get about this are like, hey, it'd be really good for me if I get to guest post for you.
Totally.
Or have you Have you ever written about how to write a book? And like, if you Google how to write a book, like my article that I wrote years ago is number one.
Yes.
So you just have to do your research.
Yeah, totally, Jeff. This, I completely agree. That's what I mean. I get a ton of these. Even I'm sure you get it much more since you have so much traffic. But like, even like as you're getting more traffic, you will get those pitches where they haven't even read your blog or anything like that, and they're reaching out.
Yeah.
That
the
just
worst.
sucks. Yeah, and we had something in the chat here. Someone. He says it's funny because I literally got an advice today that made me laugh. As long as it's not an email newsletter, sign me up. I think it's from like Gary Vee or something. He said like do some Facebook videos. But honestly, you don't own, like, if you do that, that's on Facebook's platform. So I completely believe that you definitely should be building your list. So I guess maybe Gary doesn't like, if you're referring to Gary Vee, I'm not sure, but if that's it, maybe he doesn't like personally to get emails, whatever that is. But that doesn't mean he has an email newsletter. It's working well for him to sell books. So definitely.
Yep.
Yeah. And the next thing here, we have a few questions that come in. If you have an email list from a different biz, should you use it once to invite people to opt in to what you're doing now?
That's a good question. I think the best way I ever saw this handled was James Clear. Jamesclear.com. He writes on habits and productivity. Incredibly popular blogger in the personal development space. Years ago, James had a website about online business called passivepanda.net. I think it was about passive income. And I think he had that for like a year and a half or 2 years. He had 50,000 subscribers, and he had started his personal website, started doing kind of the writing he's doing now. And it's a great example of starting one kind of platform, and he was kind of doing the professor thing and then transitioning to something a little bit different. Now he's the journalist, and he sent 2 emails to his list with a week in between. Email 1 was, in a week, I'm going to delete this email list. So if you want my new stuff, go to jamesclear.com and enter your email. Otherwise, if you don't do anything, you're going to get deleted. And then email 2 was, okay, tomorrow I'm going to delete this. This is the last chance. I'm deleting this list tomorrow. If you don't go opt into the new list, this goes away. And then, of course, he deleted it. I think that's the best, most honorable way to go about it. Importing those people into your new list. You don't really want that because they didn't actually ask for that content. Right. I think only in rare circumstances where you're like, well, I used to do this, and now I do this, and it's very similar, like, where you kind of give people an opportunity maybe to opt out. But I like the way James did it because he's forcing people to re-opt in, re-engage. And obviously the people that did that are going to be highly engaged, much more than him just taking those 50,000 subscribers and dumping them, into his new list. By the way, like, that didn't hurt James. He's got over like 250,000 subscribers now. He's fine.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I completely agree with this. And actually, let's say, I have obviously talking a lot about list building summits and all this on my site now, but if I wanted to create a product on fitness, then I would like maybe send to people on my list and say, hey, if you're interested to follow my journey on this topic, click here, get them into a sub list. And that's how I would like tag people. So I would only send them if they're really highly interested. So I'm sure, because a lot of people on your list, even on my list, they're interested in you as a person. So they would follow your journey, even if you speak about something completely different. So that's interesting. So Jeff, you have a few more minutes for a few more questions?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I love that.
All right, cool. So here's one. Can it be a mix of the two? I guess the personality types there?
Yeah, so there's 5 total. And I think you can have like a primary and a secondary. Okay, so and some of them kind of go better together than others. So like I mentioned Tim Ferriss, he's kind of a star because his main message is, if I did it, so can you. But these days, most of his blog is featuring high performance experts, billionaires, people in the fitness industry, great marketers, whatever it might be, but people who are sort of at the top of their field. And all he's doing is kind of like going, hey, meet these people, right? Like, come meet these people. But in his books, he's very much the journalist. He's very much the star saying, okay, I talked to these experts and then I applied it to myself, and here's what I learned. So I think in his case, his primary personality is a star, and his secondary personality is a journalist. But I think of it like college, major, minor. You can do different things, but the idea here is start with one thing, get known for something, and then there can kind of be ripple effects and other things to dabble in from there.
Yeah. Someone asked, does this work in a niche market?
Of course. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, this is just about approaching your content differently. I mean, I'd have to hear what the niche is, I guess,
Yeah.
but it's about, first of all, I don't love the idea of niche marketing. I like the idea of it, but I think the way people go about it is wrong. They say, pick a niche, fill a need, and you're good. And it's really hard to actually find a niche that isn't being filled right now.
Mm-hmm.
I like what you said, Navid, which is some people will follow you for you.
Mm-hmm.
I think most people tend to follow you for who you are. They maybe they come for the content initially, but they definitely don't stay just because he's really helpful. They stay because they like you, because you got a cool looking house, long hair, whatever it might be. Like they start liking you. They follow you. People don't watch Oprah just because she's informative.
Yeah.
They watch Oprah because they like her. They feel connected to her. And unless you're gonna like hide behind some brand and your face is never going to be on anything, then your personality is going to be a part of this. And yes, you can go after a niche, but I really like thinking of it as a worldview. What is the thing that you have to say that is going to attract attention to your message or your platform? So pick a niche, say, online marketing. So there's lots of different worldviews there. One worldview for online marketing is just if you send people enough emails, they'll buy something, right? Another worldview would be Seth Godin's worldview, which is that people deserve respect no matter what. And so Seth Godin is never going to do something to undermine trust or respect, even if it costs him sales, because that's his worldview. They're both, niche markets in the sense that, if I'm teaching online marketing to other online marketers, or you want to niche down even more and talk about, using Web 2.0 technology or reaching only people who, work in the drugstore industry or whatever, like at the end of the day, there's more than one way to do business in any industry, in any niche. And so bringing your voice, your worldview, is a really important part of building a tribe. That's what I'm interested. Building an audience that cares about me and that I can help and empower and enable them to do great things. And I just think that's the best way to do it.
That's great. We have a few more, and then we're gonna wrap this up. So, being that a star is just I did this, and you can too. And your personality, how would you recommend being known for one thing when people are following you for who you are?
As the star, I guess is the assumption.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about Tim Ferriss. That's a really great example. Tim did not build his platform because he had a good idea. Tim built his platform because he went to South by Southwest and all these blogging conferences and met other bloggers. I think his marketing strategy was once described for the 4-Hour Workweek, was once described as getting drunk with bloggers. Like that was his marketing strategy. What he did, and it was really smart actually, was he formed relationships with all of these online influencers before he was an online influencer. And he's a charismatic guy. If you've ever met him or spoken with him or seen him on an interview, very nice guy, very likable in person, used his charisma to connect with the right people. And then when he had a need, he said, hey, I published this book. This is perfect for people who want to, build their list, Navid. This is perfect for people who want to quit their job. The 4-Hour Workweek is a really interesting book because wherever Tim went, he was changing what the book was about because it was about a lot of different things. Productivity bloggers, this is about productivity. Business bloggers, this is about business. People wanted to travel the world, this is about traveling the world. That's why I say niching down too much is not smart. Pick a worldview. The worldview of the 4-Hour Workweek is, don't work for work's sake, work so that you can live, and try to minimize the amount of time that you're working and maximize the amount of time that you're living. So if you have something that's about you, leverage that. And I think you still want to have something to share. So it's not just about knowing people, it's about making those connections and then at the right time saying, hey, I've got a summit. I've got a book coming out. I've got something that represents my message. I think it would be perfect for your audience. So when you're the star, you're really kind of using your charisma to make connections with people first. And you can do this with your audience too. I still think it's good to have something to focus on. With Tim, initially, it was people want to quit their jobs. So I'm going to teach you how to quit your job. Here's how I did it and made $80,000 a month, you know, and you know, kind of live the life of my dreams. And here's how I continue to do it. And here's how other people have done it. So if you're the star, you're saying, here's the thing that we're talking about, whatever the thing is that people want to hear about. If you don't know, ask, do a survey, send an email saying, what do you want to hear about? Post something on Facebook. Before I started my blog, you know, like why I say you have a platform already is because people are paying attention to you. So I had been writing for years, teaching coworkers and friends little things about writing here and there. And before my blog was anything, I posted something on Facebook to my friends saying, if I wrote a series about blogging and writing, would you want to hear? Would you want it? And 120 people, these were just my friends on Facebook, 120 people said, yes, 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 yes. I was like, okay, this is something. You have influence. You have people paying attention to you. You just need to pay attention to what people are saying and what they really want from you, and then give that to them.
Sure. And Jeff, a quick question here. Do you blog every day? I don't think you do that now, at least.
Not anymore. Yeah. So the first year, I blogged every day. I wrote 400 articles in 365 days. Yeah, for me, it was practice. I was just like, I had 30 minutes a day. I'd get up, I'd write an article, I'd publish it, and I'd go to work. And like nobody was reading it initially, Navid, so it was just my practice. But eventually, as people started to show up, I realized, well, I was sending an email every day, and I was writing longer and longer articles. So I don't blog every day, but I do write every day. I do work on blog posts every day. I have a system that I call the 3-bucket system, where every day I capture ideas in Evernote. I write, I take one of those ideas and I turn them into like a 500-word rough draft. And then I go find another draft that I've been working on and kind of polish it and edit it and then schedule it. So we've got, you know, my team and I probably have 50 articles ready to go at any given time.
That's awesome. Let's see. How long would you say you nurture kind of your list when they sign up before you make an offer? Because you have a few different products right now. So
yeah, we basically sell online courses. The big course I only sell twice a year. It's called Tribe Writers, and then I've got a blogging course called Intentional Blog at intentionalblog.com, and we're experimenting with that. Normally it was like, I don't know, 30 days or something. Now we've been running Facebook ads for a webinar, and we do a daily webinar, and you know, every day that converts. So in that case, like they get an offer immediately. We're working on a sequence right now where in the first 5 days they'll get an offer. It's evergreen.
Yeah. So keep running it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I mean, I was really hesitant about that. I'm less hesitant about that because I just realized I'm not a salesy guy, but I realized like people want help, and people that really want help are willing to pay for it, and waiting 30, 60, 90 days to ask them to buy something from you that you can sell today, I think is doing a disservice to them. You can start helping them now. So we're going to start selling something small within the first 5 days of somebody getting on the list.
Awesome. 2 more questions here, and then we're going to wrap it up. So how do you feel about getting traditional news media coverage versus guest blog posts, etc.? So is that something you have experience with?
Yeah. Traditional news media coverage is the only value it has, really, practically speaking, is it legitimizes you to people who go, oh, she was featured in the New York Times or on the Huffington Post or whatever. Typically, there's some exceptions to this. If you're on the homepage of the Huffington Post, it can drive a lot of traffic. But in general, it's not going to drive any traffic. Publishing something with a niche blogger, getting on a summit or a podcast interview is going to drive way more targeted traffic than all the traditional news media coverage combined. It just doesn't work that well.
An example in our industry, if I was on Pat Flynn's podcast, I mean, that would drive me a ton of the right people rather than being featured on some bigger publication, although that can be powerful for credibility. And sometimes it can drive if you're hitting the whole, I mean, I was on Business Insider, that drove me like 2,000 audience, so it can do that, but it's not, it's probably more like the exception rather than the rule there. So sure. And the last thing was around, let's see here if I get up there. If there's any kind of WordPress widgets or something like that, or any tools you use to grow your list, I think that was the question.
My go-to for that is SumoMe, sumome.com. It's the best list building, blogging, WordPress tool I've seen. So I'm a big fan of that. SumoMe.
Awesome. And this has been great. I think we're getting a lot of
Thank
great
you.
feedback here in the
Cool,
chat too.
great.
So, and post in the Facebook comments below here your takeaways from Jeff's session. You can also tweet him. What was your Twitter handle? At Jeff Goins?
At Jeff Goins. I'll go ahead and post this in here. At Jeff Goins.
And then your freebie was goinswriter.com/audience. So we'll link that up too below afterwards. I didn't know he will give that away, but let's just go there. It's a great. I've actually read it myself, so it's a great resource.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
And
thanks, Navid. I love this. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you, Navid. Thanks, everybody. And guys, listen to him. He knows what he's talking about. Pay attention. And thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jeff. Bye-bye.